Almost 8 billion people live on our beautiful planet. In every generation, people are born who are famous for their life stories and good deeds, or bad deeds for that matter. Some of them have been genuine legends among men, but others are considered heroes who did unimaginable things that have caused quite a stir in human history. They are some of the most daring people of all time. I guarantee some of the people you'll soon learn about will leave you completely speechless. Let us know about one of the most unbelievable people you've ever met and what they did to change your life, whether that was for the good or the bad. Share your story in the comments below. An American trapper. Hugh Glass was an American trapper and lived between 1783 to 1833. There are many stories about his life, so many that it's difficult to know truth from fiction. There are only a few historical records that were made during his lifetime, so much of his life is a total mystery. This man was best known for one tragic incident, though. Lonely and isolated in the wilderness of the Rocky Mountains, the fur hunter survived a terrible bear attack. This horrific event is said to have happened around 1823. A female grizzly bear traveling with her cubs attacked Glass and seriously injured him. With the last of his strength, he was able to kill the animal and save his own life. Nobody expected that he would survive the attack, and it seems safe to assume that he didn't plan to survive either. After this, his team of hunters left him behind and tossed him in a pit while they were fleeing from enemy forces. There he was left to his own devices, condemned to suffer and die alone. But his will to live knew no bounds. With a broken leg and many other wounds, he defied the cold, hunger, and harsh nature that surrounded him. He made the long and arduous journey back to civilization and lived to tell his story. Inspired by Glass's amazing struggle for survival, Hollywood immortalized his story with a film back in 2015 with Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead role. The deadliest sniper in the world. From November 1939 to March 1940, a war raged between Finland and the Soviet Union. A sniper who played a special role during the conflict was Simo Häyhä from Finland. The Red Army only called him White Death because he always attacked when the enemy least expected it, and he was always well camouflaged. Häyhä killed more than 500 Soviet soldiers with a repeating rifle. In his unit, he was considered the best sniper of all time. He thus holds the world record for being the most accomplished sniper soldier in world history. Never before had a soldier landed so many hits, and never has it happened again. Towards the end of the war, he was seriously injured and was hit in the face by an enemy sniper. It took years for him to recover from the incident, but the Finn later became a passionate dog breeder and hunter. He spent the last years of his life calm and withdrawn from society in the southeast of Finland. The Apache Chief. Almost everyone has heard the name Geronimo, but very few people know who this person was and why he played an important role in the history of North America. He was born in 1829 under the name Goklaya because he was always very tired and sleepy. Many years later, he would take on the name of Geronimo. His parents were Apaches and were brutally murdered when he was still a small child. However, this wasn't the only tragedy that struck him in his formative years, as he would soon find out. In 1851, Mexican troops killed Geronimo's adoptive mother, his young wife, and 3 young children in a bloody attack that left him devastated. His hatred and anger grew, and the desire for revenge and resistance grew ever greater still. A long struggle and many battles followed, with him fighting against the enemies of his country who wanted to kill the Native American tribes who lived there. The Apache was appointed chief and grew increasingly concerned about his people as their numbers were getting smaller and smaller. Only in his old age did he bow to the overpowering U.S. Army and admit defeat. He was arrested and later spent the final years of his life on a small farm in Oklahoma. His strong will for freedom and justice for Native Americans made him a legend in the history books of many natives. A Marine receives 2 awards. The Boxer Rebellion was a serious conflict between China and the United States and occurred at the beginning of the 20th century. This dark chapter in history is believed to have killed up to 130,000 Chinese civilians. An American Marine received 2 high-ranking honors for his commitment and his loyalty to the homeland. Daniel Daly held the position alone on a bastion, although he was repeatedly fired at and felt as though the fate of his life was hanging in the balance. He stayed in place until reinforcements arrived, not once backing down from the enemy. For this dangerous mission, he received the highest honor of the American government, the Medal of Honor. This was awarded to him for the second time many years later in a separate event as well. In 1915, he was with his unit in Haiti to fight against rebels who made the country unsafe. His group was ambushed, but thanks to Daly, who recognized the situation in good time, all Marines would eventually be brought back to safety. The U.S. Navy honored him by naming a ship the Destroyer after him. Canadian Soldier. Leo Major was only 19 years old when he joined the Canadian Armed Forces in 1940 to serve as a sniper. During the Second World War, the young man impressed his unit with his courage to fight against the Nazis in World War II. Although he was severely injured and previously wounded by a landmine, no one could stop Major's thirst for action and revenge. He managed to liberate the Dutch city of Zwolle single-handedly. For this, he was honored with a very high award after the war, which only a few soldiers have ever received. Many years later, the French-Canadian decided to resume his old post as a sniper in the Korean War. Again, he demonstrated his bravery and helped his country to conquer one of the most important battles in the mid-1900s. It was only thanks to Major and his courage that this post would later make it home safely. Once again, he was honored with a very special medal to commemorate his good deeds and his sacrifice for his fellow man. The Mongol Warrior. Genghis Khan is definitely one of the most extraordinary people in human history. The Mongol was an important warrior and founded the well-known Mongol Empire. Born around 1155, his original name was Temujin. In the Middle Ages, the Mongols were known as horsemen who went to war with thousands of horses and fighters. Under Genghis Khan's rule, tribes were united and large parts of Central Asia were conquered with ease. From 1206 to 1227, he was the first man to rule over all Mongols and won further victories that reached as far as the Sea of Japan. No other ruler had ever had such massive amounts of success at the time. His legacy continues to play an important role in the history of Mongolia to this day. The name Genghis Khan literally means Mongolian conqueror, and there could not be a more apt description for the life and times of this man. The Chinese Pirate. Pirates were one of the most fearsome groups of people up until the 19th century. These relentless warriors knew no mercy and were legendary for the raids that would see them steal immeasurable amounts of goods and valuables. What is lesser known is that certain women would also instill fear into the hearts of some seafarers. The Chinese Zheng Yao, who was better known as Qing Shi, was considered the queen of pirates and was one of the most feared historical figures of her time. She was a former prostitute who married a Chinese pirate leader in 1801. After his death, she took command herself and sailed with her fleet across the South China Sea. She fought against Spaniards, English, and Portuguese. At the height of her victories, the dangerous woman led an empire of over 800 ships and had a crew of around 100,000 men, women, and children. Never before in history had a woman performed such a feat at sea, and I can't think of another woman who became such a strong leader. Let's hope that history will continue to progress, and soon other women will prove themselves to be powerful world leaders as well. Qing Shi is truly a shining example to aspiring female leaders everywhere. Well, if you ignore her ruthless killing, that is. The Officer Mad Jack. There was a British man named John Churchill who became famous for his unusual decisions and tactics during World War II. He was known to everyone by the name Mad Jack. On the surface, the man followed idiosyncratic procedures in the fights against enemies. Not only were his allies astonished by what he was able to accomplish, but his enemies were too. He did not go to war with rifles and ammunition. Instead, he tried to win battles with a bow and arrow. He also used swords and even a bagpipe in some instances. The man has been described as a very eccentric character who liked to make fun of the enemy soldiers. However, he defied all obstacles and always followed his path and led his unit to victory many times. There have even been rumors that he escaped from a concentration camp in his earlier years, but we don't know this for sure. In the end, he survived the war and returned to his homeland, where he reached the old age of 89. The Boneless Viking. Ivar Ragnarsson, known to this day as Ivar the Boneless, was one of the greatest heroes of Norse literature. Many legends tell of the life and work of the notorious Viking. His year of birth is unknown, and truthfully, we don't know much about him at all. The only thing we know for sure is that he passed away toward the end of the 800s in 873 AD. It's believed that Ivar was the son of the Viking leader Ragnar Lodbrok, although his father almost killed him after he was born because his legs were affected by a rare disease that kept him from walking normally. Historians suggest that he suffered from vitreous bone disease. There are ancient writings that report that the Viking was carried into battle on shields by his fellow soldiers. He and his team of warriors conquered the Danelaw, an important area in England, even though Ivar was unable to walk or carry out missions on his own. His efforts even extended as far as Ireland. Despite his many physical limitations, he is said to have attended every major battle and raid during his lifetime. His death, however, has remained a mystery for many years. We don't know exactly how he lost his life, but it's possible he passed away in battle. According to legend, he was considered the king of all Vikings throughout Britain and Ireland. The legendary gladiator. A long time ago, there lived a man about whom there are countless stories, books, films, and historical records to this day. His name was Spartacus. Little is known about the early life of the Roman who was revered as a great hero. He is said to have been born in Thrace in 111 BC. Spartacus was a slave and, as a gladiator, had to survive many fights in which it was a matter of life or death. In ancient times, these public shows and events were part of everyday life and were used for entertainment. The few stories that exist of Spartacus tell the story of an intelligent man. His mind and enormous physical strength often saved his life in battle. However, he's most well known for wanting to escape from the deranged and inhuman games that were being conducted by the Roman Empire, believing the idea of gladiators and cage fights was barbaric, to say the least. Because of this, he orchestrated a revolt to put an end to these battles. This was something that, shockingly, had never been done before, and he fled with many slaves and gathered them around him to protect him and his followers. Together, they fought against the Roman soldiers and achieved historic victories. However, by 71 BC, Spartacus lost his life in battle. His courage and belief in justice have continued to impress mankind for centuries. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos.